Shirlian was silent, and Junwu shook his head. I didn't think that you would know. The martial Heavenly Emperor inclined his head, gesturing for Shirlian to follow, and the two walked slowly toward the chambers behind the hall. Junwu, with his hands cradled in front, commented, "Xianle is all grown up now." Naturally, Shirlian didn't dare answer that comment. Junwu continued, 800 years ago, when I sent you down, I told you to keep periodic communication with me so that you wouldn't be rolling in the mud all by yourself. But the moment you went down, all communication was cut, and you had to go torment yourself. You've been ascended for some time now, but not once have you reported to the great martial hall. If anyone else was this impertinent, the palace of Lingwen would have reproached them directly. Of course, Shirlian's apology earlier wasn't directed to this matter, and Junwu knew this too. If your apology was for those few sword stabbings, then let it go. You said so yourself. Everything can be forgotten after stabbing. Shirlian grimaced. How could I forget? Then look to the future, Junwu said. There is still much that we need you for. Shirlian rubbed his forehead. Xianle is but a lowly rubbish god without power. There is no need for me. I only ask not to be burdensome. Why deprecate yourself? Didn't you perform splendidly in the last 2 cases? Except I may have offended General Pei. Mingguang is fine. I'll watch over him. You don't need to worry. However, Junwu turned around. Tell me, what kind of extraordinary character did you engage with when you descended this time? Shirlian raised his hand. My lord, I swear I did nothing. Just one day, by chance, I encountered an interesting child on the road, and we spent some time together. I didn't think much of it. Junwu nodded. Chance encounter. Child, supreme ghost king. Xianle, you do know that if Mingguang was to question you further, and you had confessed this in front of the other officials, what the consequences would be? No one would believe you. Xianle knows, Shirlian replied woefully, so I am grateful for my lord's timely intervention. My lord, you're not actually going to interrogate me, are you? I wouldn't collude with the ghost realm. These are all absurd concerns. Naturally, I know you would not intentionally collude with the ghost realm, Junwu said. I am grateful for my lord's trust, Shirlian replied. However, with things thus, it may no longer be appropriate to send you to investigate an important matter that has surfaced. What is it? Shirlian inquired. At this time, the two of them had reached the chamber behind the great hall. The great hall and the inner chamber were separated by a large mural, the front depicting the golden palace towering through a sea of clouds, radiant and brilliant. On the back of the mural was another, depicting mountains and valleys of over 10,000 miles. On the map, there were many tiny pearls like stars. Each of these stars marked a great martial temple in the mortal realm. A pearl embedded on the map meant there was a great martial temple built there. 800 years ago, when Junwu brought the Shirlian who had ascended for the first time to the inner chamber, the pearl stars on the mural weren't as dense. But now, the shimmering jewels seemed to be plentifully bestrewn, overwhelming in their radiance. Junwu stood before the mural and spoke. 7 days ago, many saw with their own eyes a dragon of fire abruptly soaring to the sky from a forest in the east. Shirlian's face grew serious hearing those words. Junwu with one hand behind his back, used the other and softly knocked on the mural once. That dragon of fire lasted for 2 incense time before burning out. In that time, many witnessed the sight, but not a single person was injured. Do you know what that means? The spell for the ascending fire dragon emits intense flames that do not harm. It's a call for help, Shirley replied. It's no ordinary call for help. It's one of desperation, Shirley added. This ascending fire dragon spell, with its intense flames that would not harm, took an immense amount of power. If the casting official was not careful, they could very well implode and destroy their spiritual core. Therefore, unless they were at the end of their rope, very few would go this route. Now that it had appeared, it meant a heavenly official had fallen into grave danger. Are there any officials whose whereabouts are unknown? Shirley asked. The matter with the Banyue Pass was not the only reason that all the officials were summoned back to court this time. The main purpose was to use this chance to investigate everyone's whereabouts, other than those who usually do not show, like the Rain Master and the Earth Master. Even those who couldn't make it back reported in. Shirley hummed for a moment, then speculated. Maybe it wasn't any of the officials from this term. Maybe it's one of the retired officials. If that's the case, then I'm afraid our perimeters will largely expand. Many of the retired officials have long lost contact with the heavens. It would be difficult to determine who is the one in peril, Junwu said. So this was probably why Ling Wen and many of the civil officials had dark circles under their eyes. Their feet weak, they were busy working on this case and certainly wouldn't have had time to investigate that boy with the human face disease from Mount Eugen. To corner a heavenly official to the point of using such a self-destructive spell, it must be the doing of great evil. Are there any demonic gatherings or lairs in that area? There are, Junwu replied, and it's very close by. Do you know of Ghost City? Shirley thought about it and replied, I've heard of it. Ghost City was the most prosperous place within the ghost realm, situated right at the crossroads of the mortal and the ghost realms. This was where all manner of spirits, ghosts, demons, and monsters gathered in swarms to conduct trade and exchanges. Cultivators of certain levels would also go to do business or seek information. Sometimes there would also be heavenly officials in disguise, mixing in for curiosity's sake or other unknown reasons. Of course, there were also those who'd enter by mistake and would either be eaten alive or scared to death. Ever since ancient times, although not as ancient as Shirlian, there had been many tales of the ghost city in the mortal realm. Shirlian remembered one of the stories had a man traveling at night who saw a bustling market before him with large red lanterns and colorful signs. He entered the market in high spirits, but found that everyone around him had a mask, and if they were not hooded, then they were extremely ugly. Very curious. He didn't think deeply about it and bought a bowl of noodles and sat down to eat. But as he ate, the food didn't feel right, and when he looked closely, the noodles were actually squirming strands of hair. Shirlian brought himself back to the present, and Junwu continued. After seeing that pillar of fire, I immediately sent officials to go and investigate the area, but there was no evidence of anything. So it's very possible that they've moved to the ghost city. However, the heavenly realm and the ghost realm have always drawn very clear borders, Without enough proof, we cannot intrude on Ghost City, which is why, this time, I need someone to descend in secret and probe Ghost City. We can't alert the enemy and have them move again. Is that why this couldn't be discussed openly at the Great Hall with everyone and let too many know? Shirlian asked. That is correct, Junwu replied. Then, my lord, pray give Shanle the command. The first candidate I had in mind was originally you, Junwu said, but for this it may be inconvenient for you to go. How would it be inconvenient? Shirlian asked. First, the East is ruled by Lang Qianzhou. If you should go, you must cooperate with him, Junwu said. Shirlian responded that would not be a problem. Please do not worry. Second, Junwu continued, do you know whose territory the Ghost City sits in? Taken aback, Shirlian said, unsure, is it Hua Cheng? Junwu nodded slowly, and Shirlian's guess was confirmed. But then something else came to mind. That pillar of fire in the eastern forest blazed up 7 days ago. Coincidentally, it was 7 days ago when Hua Cheng left Puchi Shrine. The timing was impeccable. Was there a connection between the two events? It looks like your relationship with him is not bad, which isn't a problem, Junwu said. The only problem is whether he's involved. If you feel awkward, then do not force yourself. If you have any other suggestions or anyone you'd nominate, do let me know. However, Shirlian still said, let me go. I don't think that Crimson Rain Swordflower is a disingenuous individual. Junwu looked at him. Shanle, I know you're very capable and know what you're doing. However, I also know that you always think the best of everyone. Hearing his words, Shirlian gave a small smile. Please don't say it like I'm a princess who has never left home. Those words really don't suit me anymore. Junwu still shook his head. I shouldn't comment on the friends you make, but I will say this. Be careful of Hua Cheng. Hearing this, Shirlian lowered his head in a bow and said nothing. He should have responded with, yes, my lord. After all, it was a habit by now. Yet for some reason, he really didn't want to say yes. Be especially careful of that wicked blade of his, Junwu continued. What do you mean? Shirlian asked, curious. The scimitar, Ming. It is a cursed blade, a blade of misfortune. An evil weapon such as that would need a terrifyingly cruel sacrifice and a bloody determination before it could be forged. Don't touch it, and don't let it injure you either. Otherwise, the consequences would be unimaginable, Junwu replied. Shirlian couldn't tell where his sudden surge of confidence came from, but inwardly he thought, San Lang probably wouldn't strike him with the blade. Still, he responded, Shanle understands. Junwu nodded again. I will naturally be at ease with you taking this case. If you don't feel any awkwardness, then even better. But still, going on this mission by yourself may be too much. Are there any other officials you'd like me to appoint to the case? It really doesn't matter, Shirlian said, after some thought, but preferably someone easy to get along with. It'd be good if they're powerful, so they can lend me some spiritual power from time to time. Junwu smiled. He struck out both Nanyang and Xuanzhen with the first condition. Truly, no one could say that the Feng Xin and Mu Qing of today were personalities that were easy to get along with, and Shirlian started chuckling too. How goes it between the three of you? Have you spoken with them yet? Junwu asked. The Heavenly Emperor himself never entered the communication array, and thus was naturally unaware of the buzzing chit-chat that went on amongst the officials. "We spoke a few words," Shirlin replied. "It's been so many years, and yet you have only spoken a few words?" Jinwu inquired. "Oh, that's right. I heard when you ascended this time, you destroyed many of your fellow officials' palaces and properties, and one of them was Nanyang." Shirlin argued back. "I paid back that debt, all 8,880,000 merits, and for this I need to thank my lord for giving me the opportunity to go to Manchukuo." "You should thank Nanyang," Jinwu replied. "I heard Lingwen say that it was he who privately approached her and said that there wasn't any need for you to pay back the reconstruction cost." Shirlin was stunned. "I didn't know about this at all. No wonder those 8,880,000 merits were so easily repaid. So much of it was already forgiven. Yet at the time, it was the palace of Nanyang that was the most damaged. They say half of the golden roof had collapsed. Nanyang made sure Lingwen would not tell you, so naturally you are unaware. Since he did not want you to know, then it would be best to keep pretending to be ignorant," Jinwu said. Shirlin didn't know how to feel about this. Complicated and bittersweet, his mind was clouded and all over the place. At last he sighed soundlessly and thought, "Truly, in this world, the words 'don't tell anyone' are empty." Jinwu contemplated for a moment, then said, "If Nanyang and Xuanzhen will not do, then how about the Windmaster?" Shirlin pondered the option. "Lord Windmaster is very good, but I don't know if she would want to go on this mission with me." "The Windmaster is powerful," Jinwu said, "a lively person who enjoys making friends, and thus matches your first condition of being easy to get along with. After the business with Banyue, the Windmaster has a good impression of you as well. I think you two will be all right. If you do not have any other questions, then descend with the Windmaster and investigate the ghost city. Also—" "Yes?" Shirlin asked. Jinwu said languidly, "Work hard, but do not force yourself." Shirlin was startled by those words and smiled. "What is my lord saying? I'm not forcing myself." Jinwu patted Shirlin's shoulders. "Return to the palace of Shanle to rest for now. I'll send word to summon the Windmaster." Shirlin blinked. "I don't have enough merits, so no palace has been erected. The palace of Shanle from the past has long since been torn down, so what palace of Shanle are you talking about?" "I've granted you a new one," Jinwu said. "You cannot possibly always squeeze into that broken down little shrine." Shirlin left the great martial hall and was led to the palace of Shanle by a junior official from Jinwu's palace. This palace of Shanle was practically exactly the same as the one he had had in the past. Red glass walls, sumptuous and elegant. He stood outside the palace gates for a long time, but not a shred of desire to enter came to him. The scrappy mortal was still best suited for a scrappy shrine after all. A proud and glamorous heavenly palace like this wasn't a place where he could stay. He loitered outside the entrance and waited for the Lord Windmaster to come and find him. But after a while, the one who appeared wasn't the lady cultivator in white, but another white-clad cultivator. The cultivator had a glowing spiritual aura in abundance surrounding him. It was the one from the meeting at the Great Martial Hall, who was randomly fighting Pei Ming, Qing Xuan. He waved his whisk, a smile hanging off his lips. "Greetings, Your Highness." Shirlian smiled back. "Greetings, fellow cultivator," he responded. Truthfully, he really wanted to ask who the cultivator was, but thought that it would be rude to do so. He was just about to sneak a peek at his scroll to see just which heavenly official was named Qing Xuan when the person in question walked up to him and exclaimed, Let's go check out down below." Shirlian was taken aback. "My friend, I'm waiting for someone." Hearing this, the cultivator placed his whisk into the back collar of his outer robe and turned around in wonder. "Who are you waiting for?" "I'm waiting for the Wind Master," Shirlian replied. The white-clad cultivator looked even more confused. "But I'm right here." Shirlian's brows jumped. "You're the Wind Master?" The other flashed open his fan and started fanning. "I am the Wind Master. Was there ever any doubt? Did you not know who I was? Have you never heard of my name, the Wind Master Qing Xuan?" His tone was irrefutable and absolute, strong and confident, as if Shirlian not knowing his name was an impossible thing to happen. The folding fan had the word for wind, feng, written slantedly along the front. The back had 3 inclining lines drawn, the exact same fan that the lady cultivator in white had had in her hand. Shirlian suddenly recalled Fu Yao had mentioned that some upper court heavenly officials, under special circumstances, had the ability to transform their appearance. While at Banyue, Nan Feng had also uttered an incomplete sentence. The Wind Master had always been what? A man? After getting dragged for a few steps, Shirlian still couldn't fully process this information. Lord Wind Master, why did you disguise yourself as a woman last time?" "What, was I not beautiful?" the Wind Master asked. "Yes, but..." Shirlian was still confused. "If I was beautiful, then there's no but. As long as I looked good." The Wind Master smiled brightly. "Of course, it's because I'd look good that I was in disguise." Having said that, he looked to have suddenly come to an idea and closed his fan. He gave Shirlian a once-over with a calculated look, then spoke after a moment. "Speaking of which, don't we need to be undercover for this mission to the Ghost City?"